Hello and welcome back to another episode of More Than a Business Live. My name is Mitch Case. I am your host. I am also the co-founder of my wife and I's business called More Than a Meal, where we work with organizations to help them strengthen their most valued relationships by showing gratitude and appreciation one meal at a time. We come to you every single Thursday at 3 p.m. Central Time to bring on guests that are doing the hard work of building desirable places to work to help increase retention and attract individuals through engagement strategies, through retention strategies, through benefits, and all the other things that are on those individuals' plates. Today, we have a special guest that helps those individuals, and I'm really excited to welcome him on the show here in just a second. But before we do that, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, True Captive. If you've not heard of True Captive, they believe in healthcare that is personal and insurance that is not complicated. So if you do want to learn more about their unique captive healthcare program, go ahead and reach out to them at truecaptive.com. You can hit me up as well, and I'd be happy to get you introduced to them from that perspective. So today's guest is a author getting ready to release a book here very, very soon called The Tip Jar Culture. He and I originally met on the patio having a drink at a reception for the Missouri SHRM conference back in August, and just really kind of hit it off. And I thought he had just an amazing message in the way that he goes about it. He has a very, very unique background that he's able to put out there into the world of both HR executives and business owners. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to the show, Mr. Gregory Offner. Greg, how's it going, man?
Hey, Mitch, I'm awesome. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
You bet. Welcome to the show. I know you said you are getting over some sicknesses inside the house. I know that we had that last week, so I'm a little bit more hoarse than usual, and you guys are hopefully on the up and up there. Before we dive into this impact story that I was kind of talking about, go ahead and give the audience a little bit of an idea of kind of who you are and what your background is, and kind of one of the things that I've always kind of talked to unique to you. And make sure you take your coughs, man. Go ahead and do what you need to do. We are a live show, and it's totally acceptable here. But what I thought was just your background being very unique in this space. And go ahead and give them just a little high level of who you are and what you do, and then we'll jump into that impact story.
Yeah, man, I was feeling great until you're like, you're getting over a cold. I was like, I am, and there's the throat tickle.
You feel it.
Awesome. So like petri dishes. So yeah, my background is kind of unique. I had a day job like many people. I was in sales and marketing. I had a night job like some people, except my night job was working in piano bars at the piano, performing and entertaining audiences all over the world. So by day, sales guy, by night, piano guy. And in 2015, I suffered a vocal cord injury while performing that doctors thought was going to silence my voice forever. They said, you're definitely never going to sing again. We're not sure if you'll ever be able to speak again. The only way we see that we could save your voice is if you undergo surgery. And vocal cord surgery it's not as simple as setting a broken leg. Even the best surgeons can make a mistake. Wow. And if they do, that's it for your voice forever. So we spent, a couple of days wrestling with that decision. Do I do it? Do I sort of see what life hands me? And ultimately decided to undergo surgery. This guy was literally the best in the world. He invented most of the surgical procedures on the voice. And so I felt like I was in great hands, went into surgery. The surgery was a success, but we would learn a few weeks later, it was only the first of many that were going to be needed if I was going to actually restore my voice to a point where it was usable on a day-to-day basis. And so I've ultimately had 15 surgeries on my vocal cord over the course of the better part of a decade. And in the process of having those surgeries, what you might imagine, I had to really back away from, and then ultimately lost my job in sales because I could not be vocal enough to succeed in that profession. Wow. And I immediately lost my job at the piano bar. Not that they fired me, but I couldn't perform. So that shift into myself became my last shift I ever worked at a piano bar. And so in the ebbs and flows of that surgical process over several years, I became pretty disenchanted and then ultimately very depressed because I didn't know where I fit in and I didn't know what I could offer the world and how I was going to make a living. And it wasn't until I met a mentor who pointed me in the direction of public speaking, which is kind of ironic. You lose your voice and then you become a professional speaker.
Definitely.
So everything you've experienced and all of the skills and attributes you bring really seem like they're pointing in this direction. And is there any reason you haven't done it before? And I thought, well, yeah, I'm not an astronaut. I haven't won a gold medal. Like, who wants to listen to me speak?
Right. Oh, yeah.
But in that silence, while I was recovering and trying to reclaim my voice, I literally found my voice again. I found what I was passionate about. And that's why I looked at both these jobs that I lost and I said, I made more money in sales. Excuse me. I made more money in sales than I did at the piano bar. The piano bar was a heckle. I had more fun at the piano bar.
Yep.
And even though this job in sales paid my bills, I really was actually kind of excited to be able to just let go and feel like, oh, I got a free pass.
Yeah.
And I wondered why. Why is that? Why didn't I like this job that paid so well? And why did I love this job that didn't pay so well? And I started to dig into those emotions. And then I started to research the science of engagement and of building an experience that people want to partake in, and what it was that psychologically drew us to certain activities and repelled us from others. And all of that learning has become the work that I do now for organizations. And I help organizations and the people within them. I call it taking the irk out of work, create a workplace experience that folks want to engage with, that allows them to deliver their best performance, both for themselves, for their organizations, and for the people their organizations serve. And so that's what brought us together at that SHRM conference.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know that we got a chance to really dive into my history, but as you're just talking, it just resonated so much from, traditional schooling into engineering, getting into the real world, not being thriving in engineering, going into sales, being successful, starting this side business, which is now more than a meal, and realizing it's not paying me much, but I just thrive in this meal service. And the other side that is paying me well, like I don't know what to do there. And ultimately kind of figured out, like, at its core, what I really truly wanted out of whatever it was I was going to do was truly help and make an impact on those individuals' lives. And there's a lot more to go into it, but ultimately what you found was just that desire to go and take the irk out of work, is truly just a very impactful story. I was getting, like, I don't think we even need to go into an impact story. Your story in and of itself is incredibly impactful. I will kind of jump back to that in a little bit, because I do know, like, the work that you were doing has helped several individuals. So I want to make sure that's the case. But one of the things you've been working on for a long time is your book that's going to be coming out here very, very soon. Tell us a little bit about what this whole tip jar culture is and how you've come up with this idea, and anything else that you think we should know about it.
Yeah. So the tip jar culture is sort of a business philosophy book in a way. What is the tip jar culture? Well, tip jar culture is the type of culture you have at a business, at an environment, in an organization where people want to participate, where they want to deliver their best performance. That's the type of culture, the type of experience more people want from work, but we've been conditioned to believe that work has to be work. And so there's this belief out there, and I can't point to where it came from for everybody. I know where it came from for me. And I have these vivid memories of my dad coming home when I was a child. So I don't know, 5 or 6 years old, from work. And he was a project executive with a construction company. And I remember he'd come home and I'd want to go out in the yard and play catch. And he'd say, oh, I got to take off this monkey suit. Right. So he'd go take off this business suit. Right. And then in the morning, when I'd say, Dad, can we go out and play catch? He says, no, Dad's got to go to yucky work. That's what he called it, yucky work. And this is not a knock on my dad, but it's just simply ingrained in our culture in these little subtle ways that we don't notice, that we're brought up to believe that work has to be work. And I don't want to believe that anymore. And I actually think that we can all do better collectively if we take a different perspective, that work is not an obligation, but an opportunity to go out and create impact for the world, solve a problem, provide a solution, do something we're passionate about. And the real challenge is figuring out how to make that passion, that impact, profitable. That's what I think businesses do. Businesses solve problems profitably. But, I'm 40 something. So at least in my lifetime, it seems like business has forgotten the solving problem part of that equation, and they're just out for the profitably part.
Yep.
And that turns a lot of employees off, especially when they don't get to participate in the profitably part, where they're told, this is your hourly wage and we'll take all the stuff you generate as a benefit. So
Yep.
it's
Yep.
it's time to reimagine the experience of employment. And that's what this philosophy of the tip jar culture is. It's taking all of the elements we used in a piano bar to create an experience that, quite frankly, the audience helps us create. If it weren't for the
Yes.
audience,
Oh, yeah.
it would just be two idiots in a room playing piano, singing at each other. The audience is what makes that fun. So how do we get all of these people to make the night to make the night fun, and we get them to pay us for doing it?
Isn't that
Those
crazy?
principles, when brought into the business world and applied to a job, create this environment, this culture. I call it a tip jar culture, where people deliver their best performance, where the work that we do together is better than the work we could do on our own, and where we make impact out in the world. And because we make that impact, we make the income.
Man, there's a lot to dive into that. One, I definitely want to maybe dive into some ideas that you have on how an individual, especially a business owner and HR executive tuning in, that could maybe try to implement some things for that tip jar kind of culture. But I sit there and think, like, as a musician, I've been to several piano bars. It was always the go-to thing. Like, if we want to really go out and have a great night, we're going to get the friends together. We're going to go in and, like, we're just going to sing at the top of our lungs. And one of the things that was always challenging for me in those spaces was to actually, like, get up on stage and sing. Still is to this day, but as you were just kind of talking, I was like, those are one of the memories that I remember the most on when I was able to get outside of my comfort zone and really challenge myself from that perspective. So selfishly, I'm kind of asking on this side, like, is a part of that culture like allowing people to almost step outside of their comfort zone into different roles that maybe they wouldn't typically be involved in, or anything along those lines? It's like, does that fall into that? Because that's just like resonating with me on memories that I remember going into a piano bar.
In the piano bar, one of the most important roles of the piano player is not so much about performing the music, but connecting with the audience so that
Mhm.
they engage with the performance. And an essential element of that is showing, modeling, and telling you what you need to do, what your role is in the performance, so that it's a great experience. What I've found is that the clearer we are in communicating that to the audience, and the more consistent we are in modeling those behaviors ourselves, the bigger the risks the audience is willing to take with us. So, for example,
Ooh,
I doubt that you're going to walk into a TGI Fridays, if they still exist, or an Applebee's or whatever, and just start singing your favorite song.
fair.
I doubt that. However, at the piano bar, we create an environment of psychological safety because
Mhm.
we are encouraging everyone to sing. And so when everybody else around you is singing, to not sing makes you the odd one out. And then
Interesting.
when you know it's safe to join in and participate, when you see that people are modeling the behavior that we told you needed to happen, and when we are modeling
Mm,
the behavior we
mm,
told you needed to happen, then you'll take the risk to stand out, to try something new, to come up on stage and take that leap. And so in the business world, the way that, unfortunately, the only guide stone that most employees have to look at are value statements.
yep.
And
Yep.
value statements typically aren't valuable for most employees. They're really kind of like corporate poetry. Like,
Words
it
on a
sounds
wall. Yep.
pretty, looks great, yeah, words on a wall, but does anybody actually do it? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
79% of corporate value statements around the world have the word integrity in them, or the local version of that word. And yet, time and time again, we open the newspaper, we click on a LinkedIn article, and we see stories of leaders of those businesses who are doing things that we would say are not living with integrity. So,
Yeah.
boy, that's a weird juxtaposition for an employee to look at. They're saying this, but they're doing that. I don't
Mm,
feel safe to do anything.
say.
So they
Mhm.
just sort of uh, uh, what's the word? Doggone it. They go back into the shadows and they do nothing.
Yeah.
They just sort of
Recluse. Yeah.
disappear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting you bring like safety up, and I almost used the word safety and trust. I mean, I think those are different, but can sometimes be used as the same. This is our 20th episode of interviewing business owners and HR executives, and almost every single episode, the word trust comes up when we start talking about businesses that operate as more than a business, people over profit, staying out of just being profitable and creating that experience to where it is a place where we want you to be at and enjoy. So you're just hitting right in line with what we've heard directly from those individuals. And obviously, because you're successful in your public speaking and creating this experience for individuals. So do you have any, maybe what are some like top two, top three ideas on ways that somebody tuning into this would be able to quickly implement within their organization so they can feel as if they are, or at least working towards creating that tip jar culture?
Well, that's part of why I wrote the book, because in an hour on stage, I can share the philosophy. I can get you excited about the idea,
Mm,
but it's hard to go into the psychology behind it, the actual operational steps that you need to take to bring this culture to life. Um, so I want to make sure I'm answering the question you're asking. What are some tips that someone could use right now to take these principles of the tip jar culture and put them into practice?
right.
Okay. Well, the first one would be simplify values. Like make them so stupid simple that someone actually kind of points and goes, wait, that's it? Come on. Like, did you just come up with that like on the way into this room? Like, seriously? There's an organization that I talk about in my keynote. They're based, they're based in Dearborn, Michigan. They're called EDSI, and they're a B Corp, and they're a wonderful organization. And I had the
Yeah.
opportunity to sit down with their CEO. He'd call himself their chief servant leader. His name's Kevin. Their values are show up, smile, support. 4 words.
That's it.
This is $100 million organization with 83 locations around the country. Those are their values, because there's no situation you could find yourself in, Mitch, where showing up, smiling, and supporting isn't going to make that situation better. And when I say show up, I don't just mean being present. I mean being present.
Hmm.
So many workers who show up and then kind of mentally check out each day.
For sure.
I mean being there. So show up. If you're in the room, you're in the room.
Yeah.
Smile, be friendly, like bring some joy to the room and to the situation, even when it's uncomfortable. And support. In a choir, the beauty of a
Mm,
choir that performs well comes not from any one soloist, but from the blending of all the voices. And I think that the natural human desire to want to stand out and be awesome is great. I'm not trying to tamp down that spirit, but show up to work and perform in a way that doesn't just beat the pants off of the person to your left and right in the cubicles next to you. Perform in a way that makes their performances better.
that is an interesting situation from there. Having been in the corporate world before, I've been in corporate world and smaller business and now my own business. But in that space, there was always that sense of, my way to the top was either through somebody or around somebody. That was that mentality that sometimes I felt like I had to have. And your concept of, you know, supporting and rising waters rise all ships type mentality was, that was a new concept to me when I was, exploring all these different ways that we can help and support these organizations. um, I think that mentality has changed over time in just the last 10 years that I haven't been in that space. But ultimately, like coming across those different individuals, and you can always kind of tell when you run into those individuals that maybe don't choose to support in that type of way that you're kind of alluding to here. Um, if there's an individual, like what if you're the team member and you're in a space and you feel another team member maybe not supporting in that way? Like what are some ideas that you have, or maybe through your experience, that this individual team member can help bring that together? Because in a previous conversation I had, it's not one person or one department that creates this culture. It takes everybody within the organization to create this tip jar culture. Now, maybe there's some leaders that help direct us, but ultimately everybody has to buy into that. What do you do when you have somebody that's not?
Oh, that's a big question.
Sure
And
is.
it's a difficult question to answer because every individual is going to perform differently. I can tell you what not to do first. So
There we go. Let's focus on
I'll
that
tell you
then.
from personal experience, right? So many years ago, a very young and fairly intoxicated me went to a concert, and a surprise guest came out on stage. I mean, this person was a titan in the world of entertainment. Like,
Okay.
the type of person when they walk in the room, you should stand, right?
Okay.
And so I stood, oh my God, it's amazing. And the person in front of me was not standing. And so I just sort of like, tapped him on the shoulder. I was like, hey, when he walks in the room, you stand up, man. This is amazing. And in my head, my well-intentioned head, right, I'm making the experience better for everybody. But I made that experience miserable for that person because I don't know what they're going through. Maybe there's a reason they're not standing. Maybe they're injured. Maybe they don't know who that is. Maybe it's their first time at a concert. I don't know all the variables. So what worked for me, or the way I think, may not work for that person.
Fair.
So in some cases, I think the answer is, especially if you're not in a leadership role, but you're a team member, is really like run your own race. Be the person that performs in a way that makes everybody else's performance better. Don't go around trying to make their performance better. Let your performance inspire them to be better. Now, if you're in a leadership role, you've got to have a conversation with that person.
Right.
Is that negativity, that lack of buy-in is cancerous and it spreads. And even if they are the top performer, you've got to look in the mirror and say, what do I value? Do I value the culture and the longevity of what we're doing? Or am I in it for what this guy's going to get me this quarter?
The money. Yep. Yeah.
These are the minutes, the moments where our integrity is called into question. And it's like, are you all talk or actually are you going to back this up? Because sometimes those leadership decisions come with some short-term financial consequences for long-term success and growth.
I just want to reiterate that statement, just because I can understand organizations that maybe come into conflict, especially in leaders. You've got somebody that's very financially focused and somebody that's very culture focused. They're going to be butting heads a lot when you bring this type of scenario up, and ultimately being able to paint that picture on who are we, where does that word, if our word is integrity, we're not, this is where it is. So I appreciate you just kind of hitting on that and what not to do. And it's the visual experience, the story you told on potentially causing harm to that person's experience by not understanding their situation, is something that we can so easily just force upon somebody without ultimately taking a step back and thinking through that. So I appreciate you sharing that story. Well, Greg, one of the things I like to do on this show as we kind of get near towards the end is, what motivates you every single day to continue to show up and do this? Before you jumped on, we talked about we're not always able to bring 100% of ourselves every single day, and that's okay. But, what keeps you showing up to share this message, tell the story of tip jar culture to help these organizations? Why do you keep doing it every day?
Well, I want to be the impact that I want to see out in the world. And I tried it working in corporate America. And I just didn't see the leverage. I didn't see my opportunity to really make a difference in the world around me through just working at one company. And in the work that I do now, I'm able to sort of spread this word and have it multiply by being on stage in front of hundreds or thousands of leaders or individuals within an organization. And they can take these ideas and run with it and champion them. So I'm really trying to, again, it's a philosophy. It's a way of thinking about business. It's a little different. There are operationalizable principles, things that you can actually act on within the book and within the program. So it's not like, hey, this is an idea, figure out how to do it. No, I want to work with organizations and help them do it. But I'll tell you, this specifically speaking to this role, excuse me.
Yep.
Gosh, awful. Just coughing into a microphone. When the pandemic started, it really changed things for anyone who worked in live event space. Suddenly, our stage became this camera.
Yep.
And when I was done an event, the camera turned off, the room was silent, and I thought, well, I guess I should go put pants on and do something with my day, right? Well, I ran into an organization that brought entertainers like me into the lives of children in hospitals all around the country who were in the hospital. So they're not doing very well. And we would perform for them. And I didn't always get to see the kids. In fact, I rarely almost never saw any of the kids. They didn't turn computer screens on. We were just sort of beamed into the hospital.
Man.
But we knew they were there, and sometimes they would type in via chat, hey, can I hear this song? And that was
Yeah.
cool. It felt like I was doing something. Well, a couple months ago, I did one of those events, and a young patient turned their camera on, and this individual had a smile just beaming from ear to ear, and they requested a song. Now, I didn't know the song very well. In fact, I knew the song, but I also knew I wasn't good at playing it. So it wasn't one that I performed, and it wasn't one that I sounded good singing. But I said, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. If you sing it with me, we'll do it together, okay? And they did.
Oh, yes.
And so they're singing their heart out and they're smiling. I mean, if you didn't know this person was in the hospital, you would have never thought there was anything wrong with them. In that moment, they looked healthy and vibrant and just full of energy. And I didn't think much of it except for the fact that it was very validating and gratifying to see the face of somebody I was performing for. So that filled me up in that moment. And the event ended. And I moved on with my life. A couple of weeks ago, I got a call from the organizer, and they said, "Hey, that patient's not doing so well, and we'd love it." They called actually because they wanted a copy of the video from that event. The parents wanted to see their child smiling like that. But I'm wondering if maybe, Greg, you'd be willing to get on and do a special little concert, a couple songs or something. I said, of course.
Yeah.
So the organizer said, cool, let me go work on the logistics. I'll get back with you shortly. The next day, I got a voice message from that organizer. And they said, in the time between when I had the idea for you to come on and perform the song and you and I spoke, the patient passed away. And I just want you to know that it was your performance that parent wanted to see, the way you, through what your gifts, are able to put a smile on that kid's face that parent's always going to remember. And I'm not sharing this story about me. I'm sharing this story about that patient and the smile. That's my talent applied to the world that's able to create an impact like that for somebody. And if every person watching this takes their talent and just goes out and applies it to the world and performs in a way without regard for what am I going to make from it, but what can the world make of this? What can this do for the community around me, for the person to my left and my right in my organization, by going out and performing at my absolute best? We don't know the impact that can make until we go out and do it. I've seen that it is a life-changing impact. And I know that if your listeners, the viewers, the people watching this go out with that same attitude, they can make a life-changing impact. And if business is all about solving problems profitably, they're going to solve problems and the profitability will follow.
Wow. Yeah, I don't have any better way to just end that, Greg. Like, I mean, the story, the impact, the memory, the desire, all the things that you just spoke. I hope every single one of these individuals that watches this now or even later is inspired from just what you said over the last 45 seconds. That was impactful for me as somebody that has always struggled with imposter syndrome or any of those different ways where I second guess if like the talents that I have or the gifts that I have, somebody can actually find value in those. And over and over and over and over again, every time myself or I've seen others put themselves out there to share their gift and their talent, it is almost always received in such a positive way. So thank you so much for sharing that. I got to wrap this up really fast because we are really here at the end. One of the things that we do every single week, Greg, is we give a meal out to somebody that you want to, that is deserving of receiving a meal. So really quickly hit us with maybe somebody that you think is deserving of that. And then we're going to finish up with getting your info on how somebody can get your book and other services.
Yeah, man. Our neighbor, our ex-neighbor, I guess, in where we used to live, Joan just turned 84 years old. She is a lovely human being and was always there for us, and such a kind woman, such a kind soul. And I'd love to gift her a meal. I think that'd be awesome.
All right. Happy birthday. Happy belated birthday, Joan. We'll get that info after this, Greg, but when's the book coming out? How do we buy it? And what are the other services? And how can we best get a hold of you if we are interested?
Yeah. So GregoryOffner.com is the best way to get a hold of me, right there. The book will be out early January 2024. I don't have an exact date from the publisher yet, but it's wrapped up with a bow. It's just waiting for the cover. Then it'll go to press. So connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll be making announcements there, or Instagram or Twitter, wherever you feel like consuming your social media for the day. I'll be there and I'll let you know when the
Let's
book's
go.
available for purchase.
That sounds great, Greg. Send me any of that info as well, and I'll make sure to get that published on my own personal page as well to promote that either the day of or a couple weeks prior, just to get
Oh,
some
that's
hype
awesome.
around that. But
Thanks, Mitch.
Gregory, thank you so much for coming in and just sharing the wisdom and the gifts that you've been given to go out and spread that to others in this industry. I know for a fact there was a lot of value in this, so I greatly appreciate you coming on to share that with us. Thank you.
Of course. Of course. Thanks for having me.
You bet. All right. So every single week we come to you live at Thursday at 3 p.m. So catch us. We are going to take the week off for Thanksgiving here, but we'll be back the following Thursday after that to just provide a little more info and other. It's going to end the stream here in a second.